Back in studio again. It's good to be back here. Once again, taping. I'm joined by my sidekick, Paul Martinez.
Hey, everybody.
So we've got a good guest, and I want to introduce Lee Busby. Lee came in a long distance, although you've been short distance, only 9 miles away from here, 9 minutes away.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming to the Military Show.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so we're gonna go all into different topics, I think, during this conversation, just because there's so much that you've actually accomplished and you're still doing outside of the military. So I think there's a really good piece here that we can dive into. On the phone, though, is Chris VanSant. Many of you guys may remember him from a few episodes back. And Chris, I can't remember the episode number, and I probably should. Was it 266?
Oh, man, I don't remember either.
It's all good, all good.
Right.
I think so, yeah. No, I'm happy to be here. I'm even more excited that you're having my friend and brother Lee on the show, and I'm glad that I get to be a part of it. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean, and you're always invited to be a host. I've told you that on the show. So I hope this is one of many, and we can get you wrangled in here more often.
Hey, this is my test run on a call-in, so I figured if it was safe with anybody, it was safe with Lee. So we'll see how it goes.
And you know, Chris is a little bit of my safety blanket. So
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So let's
I'm a
start.
virtual safety blanket today.
But I can look over and I see him. I'm like, all right, everything's good. I got my 6 is covered.
Yeah, so we've got him set up on a Skype call and everything, so that Lee can see him as well as hear him.
That's right.
Yeah. So, what is home, Lee? I know where home is now, but what was home?
Like when I'm growing up,
Yeah.
I grew up in Michigan.
Where about in Michigan?
Jackson, Michigan, which is just south of Lansing.
Oh, okay.
About 30 miles or so. My
Yeah.
parents still live in that area.
That's cold as hell, that thing.
Yeah, I'm not going back.
That's just.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's like brutal cold, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's cold and it's I love the seasons, but it's just yuck. You know?
Yeah.
There's certain times of year to be there and there's certain times not to be there. But that's like anywhere you live, right? Chris and I live in the Phoenix area,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Which hurt getting off the plane in Jacksonville to come here. When you hit the humidity, you're like, what the
Yeah, and it's February.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it is
July,
what it is.
August, that between there, it's rough out there. That's when you should travel.
Yeah. Well, it's a different type of heat, though, right? Well, I've never been to Arizona. It's one of the few places I think
Really?
I have not been there. I've been all over the place, but that's one area I have not gone to yet.
It's a beautiful desert.
You'll have to invite me out.
Come on out.
All right. We can do some shows right there within the tier
You
tactical.
have to come out for around the tier grand opening for our second building, our hard armor building.
When's that going to happen?
Chris?
Yeah,
April.
It'll be April. Building's basically finished. It's just touch-up stuff now, and our grand opening should be in April sometime.
Super excited about this.
Oh, well, tell me about it.
Well, we will have 2 of the largest ballistic presses in North America. So we are going to change the industry on how pressed ballistic armor is made. So Jason, who is the owner, CEO of Tier Tactical, he invests back into the company, and he lives by innovate or die, which, right? I mean, that's what we did for our whole military career. We always planned without restrictions, right? Hey, let's put a plan together. What's the best plan to meet whatever end state you needed? And then you work on that, like mitigate risk, or how come you can't do it? Policy says you can't do this. Okay, can we change policy? And that's how we always planned, which bites you a little bit when you transition into civilian world, right?
Yeah.
My first job when I got out, I worked for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And
Okay.
yeah, it was an eye opener.
They're pretty structured.
Very structured.
Very, very different, and for sure. So in Hewlett Packard, were you there during the time frame where was it Carly who led that as a CEO? Wasn't
Fiorini?
Yeah.
Who? What?
Carly Fiorini, she ran for president.
Yeah, she was the CEO.
She was.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I was there in 2016, 2017. and they sold off a portion of it to DSX. I met a guy, and he interviewed me for this job, and he's like, "You're different." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Cause you put a room full of MBAs together, give them a question, and you're going to get about the same answer from everyone.
Yeah.
But when you grab guys with our background, you're going to get 4 or 5 options that are, different than what the textbook tells you what to do, because we do plan without constraints, right? And that's different. You know the worst part of working at HPE?
What?
The veterans. I worked real close with 2 Marine veteran officers, and it was the worst thing.
What made that the worst?
Yeah.
Well, there was one in corporate America, which I understand, was there was no team. There's no loyalty. There's no team.
It's true.
And I went in there trying to build a team, right? They hired me to come up with how are we going to get new logos. So HPE came from HP. They have an account, and then what they do is they farm that account. They just grow it, right? Mm. Well, in technology, a lot of that stuff was getting undercut by these small companies that were very mobile. So they were losing accounts. So I basically came in there and said, okay, let's look at this just like we went after bad guys overseas, find, fix, finish, exploit, and analyze, right? And that's what I did. I build a target packet on an industry, build a target packet on a company, and then in that company you had decision makers, so you put target packets together on them, and then what I call the friends and family. And you can look with social media and doing all the analyst work, you say, oh, this guy makes a decision, but he hired this person, 8 months ago from the last place he worked. Or he went to college with this person, and then he...
Happens a lot.
Right? Happens a lot, right? So that's your end point. So you go in, you talk to that person, and they take you into the boss's office, and they sell it. You don't have to. I'm sorry, I just got, you might have to edit this out. I'm very distracted right now out the window because there's a black lab out there taking a big shit.
No, we're leaving that in.
Anyways, it's still I'm feeling sorry for this. Anyways.
He looks like he's old and struggling.
Yeah. So, anyways.
At least it's not a person.
That wouldn't be good.
I would have turned the camera for you. So we put this target pack together, but working with the civilians, I didn't expect a lot of leadership. I didn't expect a lot of camaraderie and leadership and team. But so I'm working with these Marine officers who one had an MBA, one was in school getting his MBA, and the first time we went to a meeting for brainstorming, right? In the unit, when we brainstormed about or a mission or how we're going to do stuff, everyone just threw out crazy ideas, and you kind of build off each other, and you come up with a plan or an idea that's collective, right? Mm-hmm. You might say something crazy off the wall, but it'll trigger me to think about, no. Let me take 10% of that and add this, and then you say...
It's like what we do here.
Yeah, right? You just kind of build off each other.
Yeah.
Not there. Yeah. So you go into this meeting, and I'm being myself because I don't know who else to be. And these guys, everyone was trying to just pitch their plan and try to, sell it to everyone. And so you get the credit.
Yeah.
And then in theory, you get promoted. But yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was real tough.
Coming directly out of not just the military and going in that type of environment is one thing, but coming out of the unit, like you had said, I had to be like a fish out of water, for sure. Well, and was it perhaps that you were dealing with Marines?
Well, I tried to give them crayons. I love Marines. I've never met a Marine I didn't like.
Yeah.
I never met 3 Marines together that I did, but that's my only Marine joke. I love everyone out there.
I know what you're saying, and my point is that each branch brings, is a little bit different and stuff. And Marines sometimes seem to be a little bit more, they're knife hand,
rigid,
something.
right?
Yeah. And I've seen it even in the private sector in different roles. I knew a guy that was in IT, and he even kept the high end type flat top, kind of look, and, rigid, wears a suit and everything looks like he was wearing his dress blues, and stuff. And And it was like, you got to dial it down.
Yeah.
You know?
You're freaking me out a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
just chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So it could have been a lot of that. So you had people who are really, you know, they wanted to be successful in their environment, and yet their upbringing and the culture that they came out of is, you know, it's charge the hill, you know, type of approach and stuff, and, you know, leave no prisoners. And you were looking more for team camaraderie, and that type of thing. But you're right, that happens a lot within the private sector.
Well,
Go ahead.
It's sort of like catch-22, because they teach you, okay, we want to do leadership in the corporate world, and you know, build an effective, cohesive team. But it's competitive out there. Like, you have to be extremely competitive, and you want the guy had to use job, and there's not. You know,
but I kind of took it the same philosophy when I was in the military, right? I got promoted very quickly in the service, right? I made the E9 list in 13 years.
That's fast.
That's really fast, yeah.
It's real fast. They changed the rules. You can't do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
But I never was like...
Because of you, right?
Probably. They're like, oh, we messed up this time. But I always I always looked at it like, hey, let's just work hard, and collectively, you know, your leadership knows what's going on, and you'll get promoted when you're ready to get promoted.
Yeah.
People see that. People see hard work. I might not be the smartest guy, but I can hustle, right?
Yeah.
I can hustle and work hard, and I think that pays off.
I got a question for you, Lee.
Send it.
And I've never asked this. On the HP thing, so, you know, like Rob said, you were leaving the military. You were leaving an organization you've been a part of for a really long time, and a completely different kind of system of, I don't know, day-to-day life. Were you nervous or scared when you decided to step that far outside of the box with HP?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, well, I did that, you know, on purpose, by design, right? Because I got to the unit, I went to selection with Chris when I was 23 years old. So I spent 15 years in the building, and it really shaped who I was as a young man, but also I had a chip on my shoulder saying, this isn't who I am. This doesn't identify me, right? So to hang up my guns and say, you know, I can do anything I want to hustle at. And that it was more of that, Chris. Like, no, I'm going to do this because I can do anything. And being an operator doesn't define who I am. I was Lee before I was an operator, and I'm still Lee. Right? There's qualities about me that have been enhanced with training and whatnot, but I wanted to get out there and show people that I could use more of this, my brain, and less of muscle.
Uber impressive. I'll just say that, because I mean, you know, you're jumping really like a fish out of water. You wanted to push yourself into a limit that I think a lot of guys don't. They typically end up going from, say, the unit into either running rifle ranges or being a contractor, or, you know.
And Chris and I have talked about this. There's three basic avenues for operators when they get out of the service, right? One, they just go teach other people how to shoot, move, and communicate, which they're great at.
Absolutely.
Not all operators are, but some are. And then there's kind of where Chris and I ended up in the industry, right? You have guys who work for some type of company that touches the military. You're giving back. We're designing kit or guns or, you know, that kind of stuff. And then
at a minimum, we get to touch the community. We get to deal with like-minded people, and we get to solve problems for guys that frankly are us when we were younger. So.
Which is comfortable. Which is real comfortable.
Oh, it is. And like you said, you feel like you're giving back. So you still feel that connection, that camaraderie, that teamwork that you get to experience. Yeah, totally get it.
Which actually going in the other direction was difficult, because when I did that, I was like, I'm going to be me. And I got it so far away from my tribe. I didn't talk to any of my brothers, right? And I kind of spiraled down. And I'm in a good place now, right? I've been with Tier and back with Chris and Jason for a year. So I'm really happy. I think I found a really good home.
Do you think it was that complete disconnection from the community you came from, that, Or was it a reconnection with that community that you came from that sort of unspiraled you, and that's why you're in a better place, or part of the reason you're in a better place?
I think it's an evolution that you should go through. You have to put yourself in a position to be uncomfortable to grow, right? If I'm doing the same thing every day, then I'm thinking the same way every day.
Well, that's how you got to be an operator in the first place, right? You had to put yourself in a really uncomfortable situation and force yourself
How
to
I got
face
to become an operator is when I joined the military, I thought Rangers were the baddest thing in the military.
They're not?
And
I was lied to.
You just hurt.
You shattered my whole world.
I'm sorry. I have a Ranger tattoo also, so it's okay. Yeah. But when I showed up at 175, my platoon sergeant had long hair, right? And this is early '97. Long hair. I mean, high and tight.
Yeah.
Right? Like
97, it wasn't that way. For anybody who didn't know that we were, we're talking about the high and tight. I mean, you shaved it every Sunday or every couple of days.
That's every Sunday. No longer than 1 inch on top. Tapered. Right. Blue Book standards.
Oh yeah.
So that's when I learned. Like literally, when I showed up to 175, I found out about the unit, and I'm like, well, when can I go? Right. Because I was 20, 21. I went to college for a couple of years, ran track in college. I'm like, I'm going to go do the hardest thing in the military. And then I was like, what, where, how do I do that? They're like, hey, settle down. You're an EIOU one. Yeah. But, so I went to selection as soon as I could. I say that, but I could have went to selection a year and a couple months earlier. I got a waiver to go as a corporal. My platoon sergeant called me into his office. Sammy Fernandez, great guy. He calls me in his office. He's like, Lee, I've seen a lot of guys go to unit. I would really like to ask you to stay for another year. I think you need some maturity. I'm going to give you as much leadership as I can. I'll promote you as fast as I can. But please stay for another year. And on the spot, I said, Roger that, Sergeant.
Yeah.
Right? I was a corporal. I was getting ready to pin on my E5. I was an E5 for 8 months.
But let's face it, most people would be like, oh, hell no.
But I listened to him. I mean,
obviously you had a great, you felt like you had a great mentor.
I'm very fortunate in my military career. I had Sammy Fernandez, and then then he left, and then I was going to selection, and Andy Fernandez was my platoon sergeant, who, I don't know if you guys know who Andy is.
Yes.
Went to C Squadron.
Right. Chris.
Amazing, right? And he ended up going to selection after I did. So that's how I ended up finding out about the unit and become like, okay, let's do this. So.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's back up. What made you go into the Army in the first place? Were you just wanting to get the hell out of Lansing, or was it something else?
So I was going to Saginaw Valley State University.
Okay.
I went to college for the wrong reasons. I didn't go to college for an education.
Yeah.
I went to college to run track. Right.
Yeah.
I got a pole vaulting scholarship. I went there to do that, and I had some priorities kind of mixed up in college. And I mean, I got good grades because you have to be eligible to run track, and that was about the only thing that I did right. But there's a time there where I looked in the mirror, and if my dad knew what I was doing, he would have been disappointed in me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have to remove myself from this environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna go be a Navy SEAL.
Oh, so it started with that.
Right. So, and my brother, my brother was in the Navy, right?
Okay.
My brother was in the Navy, so naturally, he wasn't 7 years older than me. No, he was. No, he's way smarter than that. half. I'm gonna get all kinds of DMs.
That's freaking awesome.
Freaking awesome. Stir this pot.
So you go down to the recruiting office, and I'm curious to know how this conversation went. Because Chris, we talked about that on his episode, about going down there.
So I went down there, and I went and talked to the Navy, and I was like, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And they're like, okay. And you have to become this. And there was nothing in a contract at that time that I could say, yes, if I do all these hoops, I will become a Navy SEAL.
You got the hair, man.
You do have great hair.
You do.
I've been working on it. I got different products, right? So I left there, and I went past the Army, and there was a recruiter named Sergeant JSOC.
How do you guys remember these? I hope people do not remember my name as the recruiter. That would suck.
Sergeant
I think
JSOC.
you do, Rob. I think you remember your recruiter. Like most people do. Like most people I've talked to remember that person's name, either for good reasons or bad. We remember you guys.
Yeah.
That is really bad. Yeah.
But he didn't want to be a recruiter. Right, so he was that Army guy who he was in Rangers. He was 82nd Airborne, still bloused his boots type of guy. Yeah. Didn't want to recruit anyone. He sees me walking by. He's like, "Hey, come here," and they had like a bench press in there with some weights. He's like, "Hey, see how many reps you can do." So I lay down, do some reps. I'm in good shape, right?
Are you serious?
This is no bullshit. You can't make this shit up, right? So he's like,
your bench press?
Yeah. And then I'm like, so then he's like, "Oh, you did really good. So here's a Ranger handbook." Gave me a Ranger handbook, and then he gave me a survival handbook, and said, "Hey, why don't you take a look at these and just come back tomorrow and talk to me." So I was like, okay. And he tells me a little bit about Rangers. He's like, Rangers jump in and they destroy everything, right? That's his pitch. Pretty close to it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his first thing that he didn't lie to me about.
Yeah.
So I go back there, and I did go talk to the Air Force recruiter. There was nothing in the Air Force that was hard enough.
You're gonna get nailed.
I'm gonna get nailed. I'm saying this, you guys. You're right. Just to get a response out of you. No, I went to the Air Force, and there was nothing there that appealed to me.
Yeah.
Looking back, I probably should have joined the Air Force. Yeah. Looking back, I should have went to the Coast Guard recruiters.
Right. Yeah. But the bad. Well, never mind. We're not going to go down there.
No, I love everyone.
Rank doesn't come easy within the Coast Guard. I mean, that's the they
comes easy in the Army, as I just told you a little while ago.
Yeah. Right.
But I go back there. And I take my ASVAB score. I score high enough where I can, basically pick my job. Mm-hmm. And we go up there, and he's like, "All right, so Sergeant JSOC," he's like, "We're going to go in here. This guy, you're not in the Army, so you don't have to call him Sergeant or anything." He's like, "You don't even have to respect this guy." He's like, "You go in there, you come out of there with a Ranger contract."
Talk about the guidance counselor at the MEPS.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So I go in there.
We used to prep our guys like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it was great because I went in there and he's like, "So I think what you should do is fly around in a helicopter and make maps. You score real high in geography and blah, blah, right?" And I'm like, "Ranger contract." He's like, "I can't give you a Ranger contract." And I was like, "Well, fuck you."
Yeah.
I got up. He's like, "Whoa." So after a while, I got a contract. So back to my recruiter, which I hope he listens to this because I would love to hear from him, because everything he told me was spot on, and you hear all those stories about my recruiter lied to me.
I'd like to think for those who are listening that I told the truth as well. So.
Yeah, if he didn't DM me, so I can. So I had delayed entry. I had to wait till October 1st because they didn't have any RIP contracts for that fiscal year.
Yeah, what time of the year was this already?
It was the beginning. Well, I just got out of school, so June-ish.
Yeah. So 4 months you had to.
Yeah, I had to burn 4 months.
Yeah.
So I hung out at my parents' house, and
this is the most nervous time, just so you know, for a recruiter, because you just don't want him to, you to get into any type of trouble with the law or anything like that. It's just,
I don't think Sergeant JSOC cared about that.
Oh, he didn't say anything?
No, because he was more like, he would call and he'd be like, "Hey, there's some girls down here trying to join the Army. Come down here and talk to him."
He had the hair.
Oh man, he
like bench press. Man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he hooked me up.
That's a phenomenal recruiter.
Several times. Probably shouldn't say that. So
I think it's funny. I think it's funny. Lee, I was thinking about it today, because you and I haven't had the recruiter story, but we all, there's different reasons people go into the service, whatever branch. And there's a common theme with like guys from our community where we all wanted a guaranteed path to something that we kind of thought was cool.
Yeah.
And we weren't willing to accept anything other than that. And I was thinking about it the other day, I think it's funny because we all are clearly a capable group of guys, and we weren't that way for the rest of our careers. There's lots of times we would jump headlong into something because we're like, you know what? I know I'm good enough to do this, and I'm going to crush everybody.
I'll figure it out.
Like I don't know when the mindset shift happened, but at 18, it's like we all say the same things. It's like, no, I'm not going to sign up for a job chipping paint if I fail. I need at least a path to be an Army Ranger.
Yeah. And that's true, because they're like, hey, if you don't make this or that, your go needs the Army, you're probably going to end up being a cook. I'm like, that does not scare me, because whatever you put in front of me, I'm gonna do it. Right. Yeah. I learned that when I was probably in kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
Early.
I started wrestling in first grade, and I didn't win a match. That first season in Michigan, wrestling's a big deal, right?
And this inspired confidence in you.
Well, it made me upset and embarrassed when you're standing out there in the middle of the mat and they push your arm down and the other guy's arm up. You're a winner. He's a winner. You're a loser.
Do they still do that today because of the?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Right. I have
everybody's
that.
a winner.
Ingrained, right? It's like, so I remember looking at I didn't have wrestling shoes, right? I had just regular street shoes.
Love it.
And I remember looking at my shoes, just like feeling like a loser. So I didn't lose a match the next year.
Yeah.
You know, I hustled. I worked. Like, I have a sister who's 2 years older than me, and my mom would make her help, like at home, like let me practice my moves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did your sister love that?
Isn't it?
Yeah, my sister loves me. I mean,
That's
I
awesome.
broke my arm in 8th grade, and my sister broke out in hives.
Wow.
She loves me. She's
That's
great.
awesome.
She's still amazing. We're very close.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
I was going to say, isn't it funny that, like, particularly like our generation and our parents and grandparents, like we all come from there's winners and losers kind of growing up environment.
Yeah.
And all of us to a T, us, our parents, our grandparents will all tell you that losing is the thing that made them stronger. It made them want to achieve more. And it's one of the things we always talk about it, like the trophy society that we're in now. Like, kids don't learn that lesson. They don't build that drive early on. Like Lee said, in kindergarten, he got beat and he felt bad. So he got better and he wanted to win and he worked harder, even at an early age. Like, I can't believe like that's disappearing from the world.
It's funny because I have a son, Zachary, 22 years old, right? And I remember coming home from work, and he's so proud, and he comes up to me. He's got, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 blue ribbons. And I'm excited for him. Like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. You won. I'm like, what's this one for? And he tells me, I'm like, did everyone get a ribbon? He's like, yeah. And I like threw it away. What's this one for? Everyone get it? Yeah. We get to the last one. He's like, no. I won that. No one else got it. And I'm like, I am so proud of you. I'm put this up here. You earn this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's so true though, Chris, because I think that is something that's potentially, and we're not going to know it maybe for maybe another 5, 10, 20 years from now, hurting our society. Because if everybody is equal in that type of way, you're not going to have those individuals that really want to try to achieve and, excel in their lives and in their professional lives as well. And they're okay with just being status quo.
Well, it just fosters a bad relationship with consequences, I think. The consequences are real. If you make an effort and you practice all the time, then you win and you get to hold your hand up. And if you don't, then you got to look down at your shoes and feel like a loser. And that's life.
Yeah.
And it's a lot better
Those
to
are
learn
emotions
it.
you have to learn to deal with.
Yeah.
And you should learn it in first grade instead of when you're in college or you have a career or you have a family, and then real consequences are on the line.
Yeah.
So I think it's not.
That picking yourself back up lesson translates for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We talk about that, like all these years later. So the challenges are different and the things that happen to you are different. But that being able to look at yourself and go, man, I'm doing really bad here. What do? I need to do something about it. You don't just wait for society or someone to hand you the thing to make it better. You pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you figure out how to make it better.
And no one else can do that except yourself. Like, look yourself in the mirror and be honest. Because everyone around you is going to either it's okay or they'll take it to the extreme. Like, but mostly right now, everyone tries to pick you up and help you out. But no, I need you to be honest. Like, no, you didn't win because you didn't work hard enough. Right? I mean, there is a cap there. Like, hey, there are people that are just physically more gifted than you or stronger than you or faster than you, and that's going to happen. That's okay, as long as you can look in the mirror and say, I worked my ass off.
Yeah.
I took second place, but I earned my second place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it even works, even if physicality is not your thing or whatever, you know, extremely intelligent people, they fail at something and they use their head and they figure out a way to do it differently or to do it better or to be smarter than the person next to them. Yeah. Like it works across every facet of your life.
I think so. Work smarter, not harder sometimes, right? Use your brain.
Yeah. It's the way it's supposed to work.
I think so.
October, and this is what year again?
I joined in October 96.
Okay. I just left there. So we passed. I left Benning, I got assigned to Fort McClellan, Alabama. And oh my gosh, it was terrible. Anyway, so you arrive at OSIT, Fort Benning.
Yep, and do my 11 X-ray.
X-ray, okay. So I was going to ask you, did they put you on the Bravo path or?
Yeah, so I had 11 X-ray, but in my contract was go to Ranger Battalion.
Okay, so option 40.
Right? And Sergeant D-Chalk is like, whatever they tell you, don't listen to them.
Yeah.
You're 11 X-ray, but you will be 11 Bravo. You're going to be infantry. They're going to tell you you're going to be 11 Mike or 11 Charlie. He's like, Lee, just don't listen to them. Because your paperwork is right and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I'm in basic training. They're like, you're 11 X-ray. Everyone's here is going to be 11 Charlie. No offense, brother.
Hey, Paul too.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I didn't know. I didn't get briefed. So
Yeah, you didn't have Sergeant D-Chalk.
I'm an 11 what?
Yeah. And I just stood there, and sure enough, it was exactly everything all the way to RIP to Ranger Battalion was exactly like my recruiter told me.
Wow. Good on him.
Yeah.
And so airborne school, fine, go through RIP, come into the unit.
Time.
And so where was it that you heard of the unit where you decided that that's where you wanted to go? Because you said as soon as you arrived almost.
As soon as I arrived.
So how did you know about it?
Well, my platoon sergeant had long hair because he made selection. So he'd already started growing his hair out.
Gotcha.
So as soon
They
as...
gave him like relaxed standards.
Yep.
I didn't put the two together. When you said you walked in there and
Literally, when I walked in, my platoon sergeant had long hair. And I'm like, I learned about the unit day 1, day 2 in Ranger Battalion.
And immediately you knew.
Well, I was like, well, if that's better than this, why am I here? How do I go to selection? And they're like, whoa, you have to be on your second enlistment. You got to be this. I'm like, check. Right? Okay, I'll wait. I'll go to selection. So that's why I tried to go to selection when I was an E4.
So you said he stayed there about 8 months, a year or so before the other platoon sergeant took over?
He was there for another couple months and then he left.
Oh, okay. Were you able to pick his brain about things? No.
He didn't talk to me. Okay. I'm just private, right?
Yeah, I didn't know
I was going to say, when you're a young ranger in a regiment and you start hearing stuff on the grapevine, you realize not all superheroes wear capes. Some of them just have long hair and beards.
Well, how many decisions in SOF have been made, like life-altering decisions based on a haircut? Like, this one sucks. I want that one. What do I got to do? What do I got to carry? What do I got to walk at?
It's either a haircut or how do I stand over there with my hands in my pocket?
Yeah, getting hands in your pockets. Exactly. Yeah. That's so hilarious, though, that you walked in there and you saw him and you're like, okay, well, if that's better, then that's where I want to go. And that's what you just basically started working your career for at that point. How challenging was it for you to get in there and to make corporal, especially within regiment, knowing that you're leaving? And I'm assuming a lot of the people within the regiment knew you were leaving. Nobody knew.
No, I mean, you don't share that information.
That's what I was curious about. It's like, did you really just tell people that?
No.
Okay.
I worked hard.
Yeah.
I got counseled for being too mean to other privates.
Yeah.
Because I hated mass punishment. Well, if you mess up and I have to do push-ups, you're gonna hear about it later.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's right.
Yeah.
You got in a good unit as well. I mean, you got inside first, which is in Savannah.
Oh yeah.
I say good because of the location.
Yeah.
Well,
they're pretty good.
Not everybody.
I was in 375.
Yeah. Not everybody wanted to stay at Fort Benning once they got through OSIT and everything else.
Nobody wanted to stay at Fort Benning.
Exactly.
No, I almost cried. They're like, you stand over here. And I was 11 Charlie. They're like, stand over here. You're going to Benning. And
Well, when I ripped, they go through the,
Nice.
you did.
Yeah.
They go down the line and they're like, 375, 375, 375. He comes to me and he puts his hand over my shoulder and points to the guy in the rank behind me. 375.
You're kidding.
No bullshit.
And then he comes back to you and says 175.
Yep.
What do you like about you?
I don't know. He was probably from 175, so all the good-looking guys.
No, I was gonna say, you look at the hair. I mean, they're on the beach, man. We got an image to uphold. They keep the swamp donkeys in the swamp and Columbus.
Got to keep the abs going in the chest. I mean, you didn't do the bench press.
175, and then you send the weirdos over to 275. Or sorry,
275.
So you never then, because you only had to wait a year before you went off to selection and stuff, you never went to Ranger School?
No. I was there. You have to be on your second enlistment to go to the unit at the time. You had to be an E5. So I was at 175 for just over 4 years.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. So I left there as an E6.
Oh, see, I didn't put the two together.
Yeah. So like I said, I made rank quickly in the military, and
Sure.
it was just like how I approach sports. If I just work hard, it all works out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of looked at it. So I just worked hard, and people saw it, and I had really good mentors.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you're listening to this and you are interested in a selection or something like that, like the standards have changed for.
Yeah.
So don't think like, hey, you have to be on your second enlistment or this and that. Like talk to your recruiter, talk to your
Yeah, we're talking 25 years ago.
PAO or not your PAO, LNO, whatever.
Talk to Sergeant D-Chalk.
Call DChalk and he'll tell you. But just ask because you may be eligible for
Yeah.
it.
In Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go find
Yeah,
him.
in Lansing.
I wonder if he's still there. So at this time frame, I mean, were you in a line unit or were you like Paul? Were you in headquarters company?
No, I was in a line unit. I went to BCO, 3rd Platoon. Hard charging, volunteer for everything type of thing, and then I go to pre-ranger probably within a year. And you have a break, you have a weekend or just over a weekend between pre-ranger and ranger school. So I went home, got in a car accident, and I had to have my medial and lateral meniscus taken out of my knee.
Oh.
So I was like, the doctor's like, you'll never road march again. I was like, what am I going to do? So I talked to some of the NCOs. I had a job lined up over at the Ranger Gym, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the Ranger Gym. I'm going to rehab. I'm going to get...
Yeah.
And then my first sergeant's like, hell no, you're not going to the Ranger Gym. You're going to come here and work for the CO. So I was kind of like the CO's like little helper. So he's like, I need a database. So he put a database. He was building a database to do stuff. So I did data entry for him. I just little projects, which kind of protected me and helped me rehab. Mm-hmm. And then they were getting ready to deploy to do a training exercise. I remember this. And all the platoon sergeants were there with the first sergeant, and there was a slot to go to Mountain Warfare School in Vermont, right? I haven't been to Ranger School. And there was a certain E6 at the time who was slotted to go to that course, who we all know and ends up at the unit also. But he was supposed to go to that, and they said he couldn't go. He had to go on this training exercise. Oh. So my platoon sergeant's like, hey, we already paid for the slot. Let's send Lee, see if his knee holds up. That way we can send him to Ranger
See if his
School.
knee holds up.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I go up there without a Ranger tab and go to Mountain Warfare School. Knee holds up, solid, come back, and it's exactly 1 year from when I went to pre-ranger. And they're like, okay, Lee, you're going to pre-rangers. And I'm like, whoa, why do I have to go to pre-ranger? They're like, well, it's only good for a year. And I'm like, yeah, and it's only been a year. So I went straight to Ranger School.
Nice.
I didn't have to go back through pre-ranger. And, I went to Ranger School, came back, and,
Yeah, because pre-ranger's like an extra phase. And you got to go to... Did you have to do it at Benning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it breaks you down, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's... And I've already learned that. I need to go to Ranger School.
Yeah.
Do you think that gap helped you between pre-ranger and going to Ranger
It
School?
did, because Mountain Phase I slept through Mountain Phase, because to learn knots and stuff, I already tested on 32 knots in Vermont. So it's like, All right. Easy. Thank you very much.
Did Vermont help you for selection as far as the Hill?
With land nav, probably.
Yeah.
A little bit, because I mean, it was a learning curve going to Vermont and doing land nav in the mountains, because in Savannah, when you do land nav, it's an azimuth because it's flat, it's a swamp, and that's all it is, dead reckoning, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to learn to read the terrain and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it definitely helped me out.
When you're in the thick of the woods or you're out in the middle of the desert, desert's probably the worst. I mean, geez, you know, that mountain looks like it's just right there. It doesn't look that far even on the map, but that's a long damn distance when you start walking or moving towards it. And it's very easy to get off course and the whole bit. Trees, at least you can pick a tree.
Yeah, and move to that.
And move to that tree.
Shoot another azimuth.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
See if you're drifting and, you know, that type of thing. So at this time frame, you end up coming back from Ranger School and you go to selection not long after that. I'm thinking.
Yeah, another 2 years.
Okay. And how long was it from the time that you went to selection? Of course, you went with Chris.
Yeah, Chris and I were same OTC 47.
And this is 9/11.
We were, so 9/11 happens, and then like 2 days later, I went to selection.
Okay, you guys weren't in selection then.
We were a couple days before that. We went up there.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. 9/11 happened, and then it was, I don't remember how many days after 9/11, but we went right after it had happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys already knew, though, going in, or they keep you sheltered? Okay.
So 9/11 happens, we're under attack, and then you go to selection, then you don't know anything. You take all your instructions from the chalkboard, right?
Yep.
You don't know. So lots of, we're going to go to war,
well,
we're going to do this.
I was going to say, it was really mixed emotions, at least I think for a lot of us, Lee, in that we knew we were going to this selection event and potentially our unit could go to war while we were there. But at the same time, we were going to selection for what we all viewed as the greatest unit in the world. And we knew we would end up in combat if we were successful. So it was kind of weird.
That was one of the questions at selection they asked me. It was, why do you want to come to the unit? And I was like, well, if I'm going to go to combat, I want to be surrounded by the best people and the best equipment. I mean, if I'm going to go put my life on the line and get after it, I want. I was
just getting ready to ask you that, because at that moment, I mean, this becomes real. You realize that, okay, our country is going to retaliate in some way. Yeah. And I know this thing that I'm going to is going to be heavily involved.
Put me right in the hot spot. And Chris found out before I did. So when we went to OTC and we graduated OTC, he went to C and he went immediately to Afghanistan. Yeah. And I went to B, and we were training up for Afghanistan to replace them. So he went right into the hot seat.
Yeah, cool. It was really weird. Even with everything going on for us, I don't know how you felt, Lee, but it was almost like time stopped, because when we went through, the operating training course and spent all that time, and then we joined our squadrons, it was like we immediately went to war. So even though some things that happened just post 9/11 in Afghanistan, it was like time stopped, and then we just joined the fight and then kept moving forward from there. At least for me, I felt like I didn't miss anything.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing time.
We were talking about Brad Thomas earlier. Was Brad already at the unit?
Yeah. Brad's senior to us.
Okay, I didn't know that either. Yeah. I was trying to.
He was on my team when I got to the team in Afghanistan. He took me under his wing.
I knew you guys were close, but I didn't know that. I didn't realize that that's the reason why. Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Senior, like E7 at the time for him?
When I say senior, I mean senior in
having gone through the
got there before we did, right? Because rank really doesn't matter.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? Rank doesn't matter. It's kind of like experience matters.
I got a question for all three of you, because I wasn't in the military yet, and so from the outside looking in after 9/11, I'm like, maybe something happens and we retaliate. Maybe we go to war. Maybe not. Like it was.
I just
we
retired.
Were uncertain, but you guys were in.
Yes,
you guys
that month.
Wow.
I didn't know any. I mean, it was right before, So of course they hit the Pentagon and everything else. I knew guys that were there, and I'm sorry to take you off.
No,
but
you're good.
I'm calling them up and asking, how bad is this? Trying to get intel. Yeah. It's hard to get through because even cellular systems were down and the whole bit. So it was, for me, it was one of these things. I wanted to go back, and my family, I think I shared with you, told me, why? You know, I mean, you're an E8.
Yeah.
What are you really going to contribute here?
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do? But it was tough. So for me, at least I'll share my side of the story of this happening and going down. I live with regret sometimes of that I didn't go back and I didn't do something, especially having the war gone on this long. You know, I thought it was going to be more like a desert storm, pop in, we're going to throw some shit down and then we're going to get out of there, you know, and make them realize that this is not something we'll tolerate. Not that we're going to be in this thing 19 years later,
right?
You know,
and that kind of like, that's how the military is. It's all timing. You got to be in the right place at the right time. So you can't feel guilty for not being at the right place at the right time. It's just how it works, right?
Yeah.
You know.
But you know, we all have, of course, some form of regret.
Yep.
And yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I tell guys that too. Like the important part is sign your name on the line. You know, like stand up and raise your hand.
I
and
take
if you get it, you get it. And if you don't,
my hat's off to people who joined after 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, the guys who are like, quit college or went in right after high school knowing that we were at war. I mean, that takes, you know, hopefully they thought about it, but, you know, it's a different decision process.
Oh,
right?
totally. And from a recruiting standpoint, I can just share with you prior to that, it was challenging to get individuals in because they just wanted to go to college, or the only reason why they were going in is to get college money.
Right.
It's, you know, service to country was not one of the dominant buying motives. It was typically money or college money.
That's how I kind of looked at it. I was like, okay, I'm in college. I'm going to join the service. I'm going to do 4 years in 17 weeks because that's right.
Yep.
I don't know. You do 4 years. And then I was like, okay, then I'll go back to college. I'll be more mature or whatever. And I just stayed in for 20 years.
The freaky thing about this is that people who are joining today were born at or after.
Yeah.
That's the strangest thing. And yet they grew, so for them, they grew up with a war going on.
Yeah.
And
you wouldn't know if you go out downtown in the US, no one knows we're still at war.
Well, it's not on the news and stuff anymore. Yeah. It really never was, to be honest with you. Yeah.
A couple flash in the pan type.
Well, once that happened, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and it's like, okay, we can't put it out there and stuff. Oh no, we can't show what's really happening, and because they started, I think, fearing. And I know we're kind of going backwards, but almost fearing like Vietnam and the messages that came out, and that they're not supporting the troops anymore and everything else. So that whole fear was like, let's just not even talk about it, and maybe it'll just kind of life will continue on here in the States.
Which it did, unless your family's in the military or you're in the military or something like that. I think it's interesting because like guys I served with, like we're overseas in Afghanistan, and now they're sending their children to like the exact same spot. Like, have you had that experience?
Yeah, there's guys in the unit have children in the Ranger Battalion.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're like,
yeah, I was gonna say I've got at least 3 or 4 friends that I served with that I'm still pretty close with that called me, and when their son after joining the service was getting ready to deploy for the first time, and it's a weird conversation when you're the 2 old guys talking about your kids potentially going into harm's way. But we always I don't know, Lee, about your conversations with guys, but mine's always kind of the same. It's like, well, you know, he's done X, Y, and Z. He's surrounded himself with good people. They're better trained than even we were back then.
Yes, that's
true. They've got 20 years of lessons learned that we laid the groundwork for and helped build those lessons. You know, he or she will be all right, and that's kind of where we leave it.
Yeah, they're definitely better trained now. Operators are better trained now.
Along that line, I mean, was C Squadron information coming back to be fast enough to? I mean, was there intel being passed that says, okay, hey, this is working or not working, and was that communication really happening? Or?
There was some of that, but that you start getting into the culture of the building there.
Yeah.
You know, it's a small unit, but it's very decentralized. So it would be more like, hey, I went to OTC with Chris. Let me get some information from him in C Squadron. It wouldn't be like an official.
Yeah.
You know, if that happened to happen more at the officer level, and you know, we did, you know, TTP exchange. You know,
well, we're still learning organizationally across all the agencies, everybody, that we're supposed to talk to each other and share information.
Yeah.
I mean, prior to 9/11, people forget sometimes, like, CIA, FBI, DOD. Like they didn't talk to each other.
They stovepipe all that information.
Yeah.
It goes back to if I'll get promoted if I keep this and hold on to it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked, is because I think today that culture is somewhat changed. I don't know within the unit, you probably know better just by talking to guys today, but I think that's one of those things. There's certain things within, especially the military, that's hard to change from a cultural standpoint. Yeah. But I would hope that at least we're communicating better about what's happening on the battlefield and sharing that kind of information, you know, to make the next group that much better. And I know we are in terms of especially medicine, you know, the medics. I mean, wow. Yeah. You know,
I think that medics and like technology, like, hey, we're using this on the battlefield, enhancing this. And definitely when it comes to, you know, technology, you change that. But I remember doing a handoff with another squadron and trying to tell them what we're doing and what we're seeing. And he's like, hey, I got this. Ain't my first barbecue. You know, there's some ego there.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, like in terms of train up for the invasion, C and B we were concurrently getting ready for that. So I've told this story before, but you know, when we got ready to do the invasion in 2003 of Iraq, no one had done a long range desert mobility since the first Gulf War. And it was our unit, and the unit did, you know, one of the things that it usually does, it went and found the guys that did that operation. It sat down and it came up with a game plan for how we were going to attack it this time. That stuff, those guys that did that original desert mobility in the first Gulf War absolutely impacted the TTPs that we executed when we did the invasion. But because B was bumping us out, we were both sort of prepping for that mission around the same time. We just went first and then B bumped us out. So in terms of handoff of information, that stuff absolutely happens. Those lessons learned do happen. But there's two things that impact it. One is the proximity in which you do that handoff. Sometimes they're so quick that the next squadron just has to roll with it.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the mission set changes. I think those first few years in Iraq, in particular, what we were doing and how we were doing it changed so rapidly that really they were all new lessons learned.
Those first couple years in Iraq were probably my favorite.
How so?
Mm-hmm.
Because
mine too.
It was the evolution of we were training for Somalia, right? You carry all this, you do all this stuff, and then we developed new TTPs to get after the enemy, and you know we had new technology. You know, trying to find people. I mean, we hit a lot of dry holes.
Yeah.
You know, and then we started getting better at it and master at it.
Was this around the same time frame that CQB really started coming into play, or was it right before that?
I guess I don't really know answer that question, because to me, CQB is part of like whole
everything you
career.
do. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I went to the unit is why do you want to go? I want to kick some and get some.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you do.
Right.
I mean, I was 23 when I went to selection, and I was an asshole. I thought I was Superman. You know? I was. Yeah.
Chris,
he can vouch for that.
I was going to say, Chris, were you like 21, 22 at that time frame too, or?
Lee is what are you, about a year
I'm
older
about a year
than me?
older than you. Yeah, we just did the math the other day.
Yeah, so I was 23. We were both 23, and then he turned 24 before I did. But yes.
God, man, thinking back at that age group and being at the level or what you guys were doing, I'd be probably the same way.
Well, I kind of think of it like it's like a heavyweight boxer, right?
Yeah.
A boxer gets in the ring, he has to think he is the baddest trucker out there, right? He's got to have that confidence. If you're going to stack up on a door and you know there's foreign fighters in there with guns, you got to have some confidence. You got to have some ego.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, hopefully in the civilian world you can check it at the door, but on the battlefield you have to have confidence in yourself and the guys around you and your equipment, and you got to be a bad mother trucker, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's a universal axiom of a combat unit. It's you're the best. Nobody's standing in their ready room or briefing their platoon like, you guys are pretty good. 80 seconds
Maybe
better. You guys are pretty good, but Ranger Bat's better. You guys are pretty good, but operators are better. And we're going to go out there and give it a second place effort. Like that's a bad foot to step out on. So
that sounds like a good skit.
Right? Yeah, that actually does.
All right, you guys are pretty good. We're going to go into combat. Everyone else has probably been training harder than you, but that's okay.
Our equipment is okay.
Yeah.
It's a little outdated.
Some of it breaks, but hey, you guys will figure it out. Some of you don't have slings. You just have to carry.
Rob, I was going to answer your question. The The SMUs in the U.S. Since their formation have always been focused on CQB because of the hostage rescue piece of their mission set.
Okay.
But
kind of
that being said, the events that actually occurred were singular, or they were a couple of times over, from, in our case, from 1977, and all the events that happened leading up to Afghanistan and then Iraq. They were all like singular 1 day or 2 day or 3 missions here or whatever. It wasn't until Iraq that it became a multiple hit, multiple CQB based targets a day.
Yeah.
And where your focus was killer capture versus hostage rescue. So there was a shift there when Iraq happened.
And there's a lot of enemy that survived on the battlefield those first couple rotations because how we did CQB. We did CQB so fast, the enemy didn't have even a chance to get to their guns.
Yeah.
And I think it saved our lives, but also, it saved a lot of enemies' life. It educated them, put them in the system, and then we fought them again. But that's a whole nother problem set, right?
Well, we always say they get a vote.
Yeah, just let them vote. Just you gotta give them some time to vote.
That's badass, Lee. It's almost like you guys were too good.
Oh,
I'm messing with you. No,
didn't mean to come across that.
No, I'm just razzing you, man. No, it's awesome. It's really, really fucking cool.
When you come in the door and the guy's in bed and he looks at his AK and you can get to him, you start beating him up instead of shooting him.
Yeah.
And then later on, you're like, maybe I should just slow down a little bit.
I was going to say,
I'll let you fill in the
Paul, Paul, in regiment too, like you guys, I've never heard anybody, well, that's not true. I have heard some people. Guys from our community, generally, if you ask them what's a successful mission, it's getting the person that you're after without a shot being fired.
Yep, yeah. 100% agree.
So those are my favorite missions. We did some stuff that was low vis in downtown Baghdad, wearing tight jeans and pointy leather shoes, and the enemy's like, "What? What?" And not a gun comes out. You just throw them in the trunk and you drive off. Those are cool missions.
Well, that's the cool part, right? That's the scary part. That's because I've seen this through when I was a sniper through my scope. I'm looking through a window and all of a sudden there's a 6'2" Ranger and he snatches this guy out of bed and they're out the door and wife's waking up looking around like, what just happened?
Where'd he go?
Something just came in the night and took somebody out of my bed. Right? Yeah. And that's, I agree with you 100%.
That's training.
I was going to say, people forget that across, particularly in Iraq, we were so collectively, the unit and Rangers that were conducting missions and then Rangers that were supporting the unit, we were so successful at grabbing folks in the middle of the night that there was literally a rumor that spread across the country that the Green Eyes come at night and they take all of the males and they never return. They thought we were taking them and killing them, which we weren't. We were capturing them and detaining them. But we were so good at it and it happened so frequently that it spread across where they feared anybody that operated at night with night vision and called them the Green Eyes.
Yeah. Green-eyed devils.
The Green-eyed devils.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Cool.
And then you do that to a point, and then you find out that one untrained guy with an AK doing a Beirut special down the hallway shoots a whole team up.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, maybe it's not hostage rescue. There's not an American in there. Why am I running into a gunfight?
Yeah.
So we changed our TTPs. We started doing call outs and that kind of stuff.
Now, you were downrange, if I remember correctly, when Chris came back and was going through SFAS and Q, right?
Most likely the timing would be that way because B bumped out C. Is the at the time that was the rotation.
So we didn't cover it a whole lot in the beginning though, but when you were talking about your platoon sergeant and his brother, there is a connection with Chris, and Chris mentioned that same name or that individual.
They actually weren't brothers. I had two.
Oh, they weren't brothers. They
just had the same last name.
We're not all related, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just a lot of us.
Yeah. It wasn't his uncle, right? Yeah. It was Sammy Fernandez and then Andy Fernandez.
Okay. I just made the assumption, I'm sorry, that they were possibly related. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I've done it. I've done it too, Rob. I thought the same thing. Actually, Lee and I talked about it like I did, which is stupid because I've talked to Andy's brother, and I know that Sammy was not Andy's brother, but I still did it.
But you guys end up crossing over and knowing the same person. So I don't know who wants to kind of share that piece of it, because didn't you both know Andy? And
yeah, because so Andy was my platoon sergeant, and then I went to selection and left, and then he went to selection.
Right.
And then when he finished OTC, he went to C Squadron.
Right.
And that's where Chris met Andy.
His first deployment, on his first deployment, that was during the invasion of Iraq, and Andy was actually the first unit casualty in Iraq. We had lost a guy, Chris Spear, in Afghanistan prior to that, but Andy was the first guy in Iraq.
And so I just wanted to tie that in because Chris mentioned Andy on his episode, and I think you guys only recently discovered, probably within the last year or so, that you both knew that person.
Yep.
Which is wild. This many years later, you know.
We've had a lot of those. This last year has been really fun for us because things that we otherwise would never talk about, we have, because we're together every single day.
Even today.
Stuff comes up, we're like, I didn't know that, and it's fun for both of us to fill in those gaps.
Because we got there at the same time, we were both young, and we both saw the evolution of the unit, but we saw it from different lenses, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty cool.
Not even just different teams, but you were actually different squadrons. Right. So yeah, absolutely, that very different lenses. Very
similar, but but different.
Yeah.
So we do have those conversations, and that's. And Chris says, this last year I've been there with Chris and Jason at Tier for a year now, and it's Chris's office, Jason's office, my office. I mean, we have our own team room.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you need that.
Yeah,
and you're used to that, and that's the team room was where you could shut the door and vent, and then let it and leave it there, and then go back out and do your job. Mm-hmm. When a shitty mission come down, and I would shut the door when I was a team leader, and I was like, all right, you got 2 minutes, bitch, go. All right, now we got that out of our system. How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you that, Lee. I was going to ask you to share, like, when did, when you left the service and you went and worked for HP, when in there, was it at HP or was it later that you realized, you know what, man, I'm a team guy and I need to be a part of a team. It's how I thrive and how I'm successful.
It took me a while. I mean, it was staring me in the face, but I just couldn't see it because I had a little bit of ego there, of being my own man and standing on my own. And
sure.
And what I've realized is not only am I a team guy, I'm a good 2IC. That's what a good NCO is he supports his commander. Mm-hmm. It's been ingrained in me for 20 years to be a good NCO. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys want to go do their own thing, and they do, and some of them, hats off, man, go do it. But that's what we're really good at. And I think if you transition to the business world, I think that's where they should be plucking operators for. Like you have a CEO of a company, an operator will tell you if you're not wearing pants. He'll shut the door and say, "Hey, boss, you're fucking up." Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's not a lot of people. So just that open communication style that you're talking about in the private sector, there's not a whole lot of that actually occurs in corporate America for sure, because it could be you open your mouth the wrong way or say the wrong thing. It could be the end of your career.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have to move to another state and the whole bit and hope that people can't find you. And because word starts spreading through your networks as well. The
problem is you'll have a CEO who's a good businessman. He's older, and it's the fluff in between. Like when I was at HPE, luckily Brian, who was my boss, Brian Corona, great guy, still talk to him. He put me in the right position. So he's like, hey, his boss's boss. He's like, go talk to him about our program. So I go talk to him, and he's like, what are you doing next weekend? You want to go to the Army-Navy game with me? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, okay. So I go to the Army-Navy game, which it was the first time Army beat Navy in a long time. And we sat on the 50-yard line, second row. I roll in there. He's the vice president of sales for all of HPE. And he's like, all right, 15 minutes. We got to talk about work. Go. So I pitch the program, right? And he's like, he's blown. He's like, can you do this same thing? Like build these packets on companies we already have, business with? I'm like, yeah, that's even easier. We got access and placement. We can build even a better packet on those. And so we get funding for the program, and then he looks at me and he goes, you talk to me different. And I'm like, well, I don't mean to offend you. I think I'm just talking to you like a man.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I think I need more people like you around me. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what an operator brings. He goes in, he talks to a 4-star general and says, hey, this is the ground truth.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fluff it. I don't care. I mean, you step into your pants one leg at a time. I jump into mine. Hey, we're not going to.
I wasn't an operator, but I can tell you that that's something along the way that's probably hurt my career as much as helped it.
Yeah.
Because I am the same type of individual, and my transparency sometimes can get me into trouble, because like that's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And that some people learn that art and that skill, and they think that that's the way that you can go on and excel within the company, is because you know when to talk, how to position it. Where I'm just sometimes no filter. It's like
It's a skill set, right?
It is.
It is. You have something you have to hone. Like when I was younger,
Yeah.
you know, I have one of my mentors, Joel, told me, he's like, you know, you can say just about anything. Somehow you get away with
Tactfully,
it.
yes.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes you don't. Right. And I get in trouble, right? And there's a lot of people that didn't like me.
Yeah.
You know, especially older operators who've been there, you know, that 3-4 year period, and then here comes Lee, and I'm running off at the mouth saying that's wrong. Let's do this. Let's go faster, and so there might be a little bit of professional jealousy there. That place is very competitive, and you know, you get this selections and ongoing process.
Very bureaucratic. I mean, there's large companies like that. You end up having multiple layers and the whole bit, and so somebody could get lost in the shuffle. But the fact that I love that he sat you down and he said, okay, you know, basically, I want to let my hair down, have a good time. So I'm going to let you talk. We're going to talk business for 15 minutes, go, and then we're going to enjoy the damn game.
Yeah, and we did. We had a great time.
That is a sign of a good leader.
Yeah.
Really.
But you have to get past all the fluff in between, right?
Sure.
He's confident in himself. He's confident in his job. He's making a boatload of money already.
Yeah.
You know, all the fluff in between who are trying to be him, they withhold information. I think General McChrystal, when he was JSOC commander, did a very good job when he came over. He would put all the operators in a room, kick all the other officers out, and say, "Okay, guys, what do you need?" And he heard it. You know, we need more radios. He's like, what do you mean you need more radios? Like, this is why we need more radios. He goes, how come you guys don't have more radios? Because your staff hasn't put it in front of you. Oh, you know, a couple days later, we